Hey everyone, and welcome back to episode 20 of Professor's Play, the show where you can get just a pixel of deep thinking with mostly nonsensical video game discussions. We are back from our winter hiatus, although it is still very much winter out here. I forgot my gloves today, it was horrible. This week we'll be starting our 3-episode series on Super Mario Wonder, the newest 2D Mario that came out in late 2023, so fairly fresh. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll notice that we have a fourth member of the team here today. So as usual, I'm Professor Phil Chavot, he's Professor Brendan West, he's Professor John Adams, and with us today, our friend and guest, Dr. Cameron Williams. As per usual with the new game, today we'll be covering the lore and just what is Super Mario Wonder, but before we get into that, I will ask first Brandon and John, how are you?
First Brandon, then John.
Oh my god, he gestured at you, dingus.
You're right, I did say Brandon and John. For me, it's not.
Yeah.
We have company. We don't.
I'm doing alright. How are you, John?
Wore my Mario shirt.
He did. It says Super Daddy.
Super Daddy-O. Nice. My child has a matching one that says Super Kitty-O.
Is that professional?
It's professional enough.
It's a blazer. It's fine.
Yeah.
Well,
Look at this.
I was talking
Classes
about
it up.
The blazer's fine.
Bust it up. And Cam, I'm going to ask, how and who are you?
I'm doing well. It's a good semester and good start to the week so far. And who I am, I'm a professor of mathematics here at Embry-Riddle. This is my third year here now.
Nice. So so this is a little bit of a different perspective, right? Because we're humanities professor, now we have like an actual professor. I'm kidding.
Cam studies real things.
Debatable.
And he's going to provide us with some more mathematical stuff in the next episodes. But Cam is also a huge video game and Nintendo fan. So Cam, tell us a little bit about your experience with video games.
Yeah, so been gaming since I was 3, 4-ish. My family was huge on Nintendo when I was a kid, and we had multiple NESs growing up, and played the original Legend of Zelda. Had no idea what I was doing, but I was kind of hooked at that point. And played Super Mario 1, Super Mario 3, and then it was all downhill from there.
I like that you also skipped Super Mario 2 because nobody wants to play that.
Well,
No.
we can go in a kind of little rabbit hole about this right now.
Yep.
So Super Mario 2 in the West is not what Super Mario 2 actually is.
It's not a Mario game.
Yeah, so
Yes.
Super Mario 2 in Japan exists and is for all intents and purposes, like a game that is fine. Like, it's not the best, but it's not bad. But Nintendo at the time felt that it was too hard to release in the West. So once again, we have come to the realization that the developers in Japan don't trust us with a lot of stuff.
We're back to Harvest Moon.
Which is a theme.
Right.
And so instead of releasing that, they took a game that wasn't a Mario game, reskinned it as Mario, and then released it here as the Lost Levels. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you want to play Super Mario 2, I think that's easier to get to now, but it didn't come here for 25 years or so.
Yeah. They released it as a bundle package in some other games, and you could access the Lost Levels that were basically Super Mario 2.
Yeah.
I was talking about the game that they called Super Mario 2,
Yeah.
which was Doki
Doki
Doki Panic,
Yes.
that they had reskinned as, which is also an awful game. Have you played like the one?
No.
It's not a Mario. You like jump on things and lift them up out of the ground
Yeah.
and pull radishes and stuff.
Yeah,
and then throw them.
Eat cherries and
And it's a
Pick up-
vertical level design.
Yeah.
Instead of a horizontal.
Yeah,
There are a
I
few
do
cool things
remember
about
the
the game,
radishes from
like
something.
the doorways that you can go through and different parts of the level you can access, but otherwose
I mean,
it was a mistake. IGN doesn't agree with me, but it was a mistake.
it's a good Doki Doki Panic game.
Sure, whatever that means.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff in there, but they didn't release it here because they were like, you guys are going to lose interest in gaming if we bring this game to you. And then they created they opened a whole other can of worms by bringing a not Mario game. Yeah.
Okay, so I vaguely remember I had a Mario game for like the Game Boy Advance. And I remember this like digging radishes out of the ground and throwing them at things. Is this what we're talking
Yes.
about?
Yeah, they
That would be
release it every now and then.
Okay.
The character that holds on, that comes over from that game, is Birdo, the pink
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
with the
yeah, yeah.
weird
With-
mouth.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had no idea what the heck that
Yoshi's-
thing was.
Female counterpart-ish.
Sometimes long distance girlfriend.
Yeah.
Who like spits eggs at you?
Yeah.
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 That's the one.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I did.
I mean, if you're a
actually-
dinosaur like Yoshi who eats stuff, I feel like someone spitting eggs at you is just like
Perfect.
It's great. Cam also puts down here that he played a lot of Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer, which is something I hadn't heard of in a long time.
What a deep cut.
I know. I spent a lot of time with my friend, also named Phil. He's the OG Phil at the time. I went by my last name.
Oh, gotcha.
Playing that game because like we watched a lot of surfing, so we played that game. His brother surfed a lot, and we got into surfing too. And that is a phenomenal game. And if anyone out there has a GameCube or an emulator, go look for Kelly
Slater's Pro Surfer.
because the physics are ridiculous.
Yes.
But it's amazing.
But it works.
Yeah, it works.
Yes.
It works.
It's a good time.
Yeah. And then he also mentions Tony Hawk, which I played a good amount of as well, and we have a discussion later on Tony Hawk being a platformer, perhaps. We'll get to that. But Cam also says here, what is your experience with podcasts?
None, really. One of my friends has a pretty successful disaster-based podcast where he will do a deep dive on various disasters, mostly human-made, and he had a couple times asked me to do a bunch of data analysis for him because he was like, "What's the probability of this happening?" And I think he was talking about the Moore tornadoes. Like in Moore, Oklahoma, they had several in just that one town, and he had me do an analysis of basically the entire U.S. where tornadoes happened and what was the probability of them having such large tornadoes year after year, and it was pretty astronomically small. So apparently the Earth hates more Oklahoma, I guess, is the takeaway there. I don't know.
I wonder if, John, you would like that podcast.
Yeah, that sounds really awesome and super useful.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about Mario today. We're not going to do much of any data analysis.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do want to check out this podcast. That sounds really
do you know
cool.
the name of the podcast?
It's Disastrous History.
Disastrous History. That's plugged in there. Go find that. It sounds interesting. If you want to see Cam's data, look for the Moore, Oklahoma episode.
That's a good title, too.
So, we're going to jump in here into our experience with Mario. I'll go first here. So, everyone knows what Mario is. Actually, I was looking this up. I was like, how much do I have to explain about this? It turns out not a lot. So I have some statistics to cite later. But first, I started Mario with Super Mario 64, mostly because, I lived in Brazil and gaming systems were expensive and we can get all of them. I'm old enough to have played like at least Super Nintendo, but my family didn't have that. But I was never really the Mario guy. I didn't vibe with the gameplay. I always enjoyed doing the first couple of paintings, right? The painting worlds in that one, and running around.
Bomb Mob in the ship.
Yeah. I always enjoyed doing those, but I as soon as it got deeper, I was like, you have to be pretty good.
This is hard.
Yeah.
And I was like, and you have some of them, and at the time there's no internet, right? So you're like, I don't know where the last star is, and I have done everything, I think, right? And I'm like, what, 8, 10?
Well, at that stage, Nintendo hadn't really worked out camera angles too well,
Yeah.
so there was weird funkiness where the camera would pivot in the wrong direction.
Well, but also the camera in that game was one of the most revolutionary things.
It was great for the time.
Yeah.
But we were still
So
eons away from where we are now.
So in so many ways. So I started with that, but then I've always had this underdog mentality, so I never pick Mario for anything. I don't associate with the character, and the character was, and I this is from some interviews done with some Nintendo executives at the time. The reason the character has no defining qualities other than the mustache and stuff, in terms of whenever you play a Mario game, Mario is the neutral character.
Right.
Is because he's made for everyone to identify with.
He's pants.
But I don't identify with him because he has no defining trait.
Mm.
Right? So, and also because his name is on stuff. Who do you think you are, Mario?
Are you a Mario hipster? Is that what we're getting from this discussion?
I don't know if I'm a Mario hipster.
I'm too cool to do what everybody else does. I'm not picking up the Mario Vanilla Bean Frappuccino from Starbucks.
Maybe.
Wow.
I never use Mario in anything. In fact, when I did my Mario Kart playthroughs and I played with every character, I did not like when Mario did well. But the platforming stuff never really got to me, especially 2D and even 3D. I have gone on a rant in this show about how if your game isn't made to be a platformer, don't put a bunch of complicated platforming in it because you're just making it frustrating.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And part of that is because I feel a lot of platformers also have pixel perfect stuff that I'm this isn't for me. But I do get it. I actually want to do a study on speedrunning 2D platformers and stuff because I think it's like racing.
Yeah.
It's hitting lines.
Yep.
Right. So it's interesting. I will plug in here as well that my favorite Mario game is Super Mario Sunshine.
That's a good one.
Because it is the hipster one, I think.
Is that the one where you got the water pack?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you have to spray paint.
Yeah.
I love
Introduction of Baby Bowser.
True.
Really?
Yeah, Bowser.
I like that one a lot.
No.
I didn't finish it because I didn't finish any of these games, but I like that one a lot. And then I'm not very good. My friend Koji and I had a goal to beat Super Mario Brothers 3 before we got our PhDs. He's still there. No, I'm kidding. We both graduated, but we never did. So, yeah, we never did that. John, what about you?
Yeah, I've been playing Mario a long time. I am an elder millennial, and I've been playing since Super Mario 3, the Raccoon Tail.
Tanuki suit.
Yeah. Favorite Super Mario. That one is great, and I think that the starting point here really says a lot, because Super Mario 3 really is a classic Mario speed-running 2D platformer, and it has a timer at top. So, like, back in the day, they used to time you on the courses, and if you didn't make it through the course in a fast enough time, you would actually like lose the level, right? Mm-hmm. And so like speed running is an inherent part of that. You lose that with the move to Super Mario 64. They take away the clock. Yeah. You don't have that anymore. It's more of a little bit more exploration. There's still platforming, but there's a lot less like time. And so because exactly what you're saying is true, because I think that at its core, Mario is almost a racing game. I think the 3D Mario loses that.
Yeah.
And so it feels like it's missing some part of Mario's soul, and I think that is what it is. It's that you've lost the racing game. You can still race in Super Mario 64, but it's not designed that way.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like Super Mario 64 and the 3D Marios, it's like you're exploring to find platforms you can do, whereas like 2D Marios are like, jump on this, because that's the only thing you can do.
Yeah, it's puzzle platformer versus racing platformer, I think would be the weird subgenre distinction.
I think it would be more like exploration platformer.
Yeah.
But John, you have a quip here about how hard Mario was.
Oh yeah, so like not to go on my like old man yell to the sky round, but like I've played the first few levels of this new Mario, and you kids don't know how good you had it. Old Mario was way harder, and old Mario taught you through death.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like you would walk on the level and there would be a gap, and you would not jump over the gap, and you would fall in the hole, and it would start you back at the level and say, do it again, until you just figured out. And then there would be a gap that was too wide to jump over, and you'd be like, how do I get over this? And then you had to find out there was a run button.
Yeah.
This Mario has little flowers that talk to you. They're like, oh, I hope you're not feeling too bad. Here's a way you do this. Press Y to run over the gap. And I'm just saying the kids these days are soft. That's
a trend, and I think there's a middle ground there, perhaps. But because we talk about tutorials and stuff already.
But you know I'm a Dark Souls player deep down.
Yeah, but I think like, Super Mario 3 is one of the, and even the original is one of the first games to like teach you instead of just like, because like if you play Pac-Man and like you die a bunch, it's not actually teaching you, because it's like
you don't get better.
You don't get better.
Right.
Like you do by doing it a lot. Right, but like in Super Mario, it's like if you fall here, you're like, oh, this is what that means, kind of thing.
Going forward, and the levels are progressively stacked. So
yes.
there's a scaffold to it where like they get harder and harder and harder until the end. You're able to like jump over 9 bullets, do a spin jump to the third one. Yeah. And this one does do it, but I will say that like
it has levels to teach you stuff.
It does have levels to teach you stuff, but so far the difficulty curve has been moved back by like
I think it's a trend in gaming
2 whole years.
And I think they have levels where you can learn mechanics without losing lives in this game.
And some people will say, well,
you
know, the Switch is a children's system. It's made for children.
It's not.
But the NES was also marketed in the toy aisle as a children's system.
Nintendo is they call themselves a toy
toy company. So, like, Nintendo was still selling to kids back then, and they just took the kid gloves off. And they put on little warm mittens.
Different. I think it's like an evolution of how the industry has gone as well, where, like, we expect there to be, like, how do I do this? Instead of picking up Zelda and being like, if you don't go into that cave, you don't get the sword. Like, there's nothing making you go into the cave.
Hand-holding nonsense.
Yes. John was upset that the game wasn't harder, because he's like that, I guess. Brandon, what is your experience with Mario?
Yeah, so I inherited a copy of Mario something for the Game Boy.
Was the one with the turnips?
No. Okay. No, this was before that, thank God. I inherited like an old Mario game and like a copy of Space Invaders from my older brother. And so those were the first non-Pokemon games I ever played.
Nice.
Was this black and white or color?
I played it on the Game Boy Color.
You say Game Boy Color.
Yeah. I can't remember if it was originally made for the Game Boy or not. It might have been, actually.
Yeah. The color has, you can play it
regular ones. Well, that's what I'm asking, because that would tell us which Mario it is.
Yeah.
Because the old one is white.
I remember like the bosses were like a rat, a Martian, a giant bird, and the final boss was Wario.
Final boss was Wario.
This is not 1, 2, or 3. I'm letting you know that right now.
This is a spin-off.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
one of their non-main.
But now I really
games.
want to know
Yeah,
what
I'm not sure which
what
one that
really
one is.
specific Mario.
I
game
mean,
you
it was
played.
fun. Wario had like 9 lives. All the other bosses had 3. I didn't
Lots
beat.
of lives.
What's this Mario game?
Like you
you're
had to jump
describing?
on Wario's head 9 times in order to
Oh,
kill
I
him.
see.
You had to jump on all the other bosses 3 times in order to kill them. And some of the bosses you could get locked in a corner and just spin jump on their head really fast and beat like really quickly if you did it right. But like the general like thing with the bosses,
Are you
like
sure it wasn't Wario Land Super Mario Land 3?
yeah,
I was wondering if it was one of the Super Mario
Yeah,
Land games.
yeah, I
Okay,
think
it
so.
that
could have
makes
been
sense.
Super Mario Land.
This is so
Yeah.
wild that this is your first experience with Mario.
Yeah.
For the Game Boy,
Maybe.
it is part of the Wario series.
Mm.
Wario was only like the final boss though. He was not a playable character.
Okay.
And then we later got a copy of Wario
Mm.
for like the Game Boy Advance that we also played, where Wario was the protagonist.
Yes, yeah. Or kind of that like anti-hero type
Yeah,
character.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
like jumping around. Then they went from that to making like WarioWare games, which
Those are
Yeah.
great.
Yes.
we don't think so.
Oh wow. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. I'll fight everybody on this episode.
Well, I don't think I've even played those, but like Mario was such an early game for me that my older brother explained it to me in Pokemon terms. Where like
Oh.
he defined what a boss is in a video game.
Oh.
He's like, so you know, like the gym leaders in Pokemon,
Ooh, nice.
they're like the gym leaders.
Wow, that's good teaching on your
Yeah,
brother's
that's
part.
pretty
It
good.
was, yeah.
Yeah, being like, here's your frame of reference. Let me move
Yeah.
you to my frame of
Yeah,
reference.
and he was also the one who got me into Pokemon too. So, what
In
have you?
Pokemon, he was like, you know how like people bully in school? Yeah, those are the gym leaders.
I kid you not. Actually, the first time he ever asked me if I wanted to watch Pokemon with him, I said no. It's a horror movie. If you know anything about me, it's the most ironic statement
Because he
ever.
loves Pokemon and loves horror.
I love Pokemon and horror movies, and I want to like sometimes mash the two together. Because let's face it, Hypno is basically Freddy
And
Krueger.
the new Pecharon thing.
New Petron, you should play it. It is a horror
Have
movie.
you done the new epilogue in Scarlet and Violet?
I've only screwed around. I kind of lost the plot, and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just out there
Yeah, I
grinding.
feel like once you do it, there's like a mythical Pokemon that like hypnotizes people, and it's like they have like it
Turns
starts.
them into zombies.
Yeah, they set
It's
up
very
like,
George
they set
Romero.
it- They set it up like really like Dutch angles and scary, and then there's like a
Interesting.
funny twist to it
Yeah.
because they can't scare kids too much. But
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
when it's first starting, you're like, this is eerie.
Mochi,
Yeah.
Mochi, yeah.
You should
Great.
try. You should try it out. It's fun.
What?
Nice.
Yes.
All right, very interesting.
Cool.
Cam, what about you?
Yeah, so for me, my Mario days started with Super Mario 1, and that's one.
Is that 1985?
No.
that's Super Mario Brothers.
Yes, I think
Yeah.
that was like 85-ish.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, the OG.
Yeah.
That game, to this day, I've never beaten it, mostly because I don't have the patience.
Yeah.
And it gets really difficult after, like,
Lava
Is it
Bridges
like
to
World
Bowser.
6?
That's the one we're talking about.
yes.
Did you cheat? Did
I
you jump
think
worlds?
I think at one point, yeah, I did, but I've never gone through the full
Yeah.
every level to get to the end. But really, when I fell in love with it was Super Mario 3, because I feel like that was a big revolution. Like both of them were huge revolutions in gaming. One, it creates the playable character that you have all these levels to go through, and it's really challenging. And then 3, they do the same things, but they had a lot of really interesting twists, like dropping behind the scene, or
Super Mario 3 is great.
all the different power-ups you can do, and non-linear kind of gameplay.
Right.
And so that at that point I was hooked, and I found most of the like OG Easter eggs and hidden things that you could find.
Like
Like
hours.
yeah,
Yeah.
the different, you could get the whistle 3 times, and I figured out if you do the whistle twice, you can get to the 8th world, and I bypassed all the stuff in the middle,
Yeah.
which, I fixed that later on, because I think some of the other intermediary worlds were better, but
Pretty cool. And the 8th
yeah.
world's tough.
the 8th world was pretty
So
insane.
brutal.
Tough.
Yeah.
There were a couple times playthroughs where I cheesed it and just P-winged throughout the entire
Nice. Yeah.
level,
Yeah.
but
For
I
those
actually
who don't know,
just...
that is flying over the entire level.
Yeah, and...
Which is like cool that they have that in there.
yes, yeah.
But you only get like 3.
Yeah, something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, and I use them very sparingly. Like, I tried to level a couple of times, and if I realized I wasn't going to make it through, I was like, screw it, P-Wing.
Yeah.
My first couple
That's
playthroughs
the
until I
thing
got
that
really good, and
Games
then...
used to do that. They don't anymore, and part of that is because of the internet and like go viral super fast.
Yeah.
But like games used to have built-in cheats
Yeah.
that
Yes.
you could figure out.
Well,
right?
Super Mario 1, famously, the one that he's saying you start with, has a series of warp pipes. And
Yes.
you can warp from like World 1 to
Yeah, they're
World
like
4,
hidden
World
and
4
then
to
there's
World
Yeah.
7 or
7,
something?
yeah. And 7 to 8.
Yeah.
And you can get all the way to the end of the game very, very quickly. And I know because I showed the person I was playing with how to do that, and then I was like, but don't do this.
Because you don't learn.
Because if you don't do this, you're not going to learn. You miss that scaffolding.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, no, because if you can't beat this level, you're never, ever beating the 8th.
That's only for if you've done it a few times.
If you've
Yeah,
done
yeah.
it before.
Yeah.
So speed running, in other words.
yeah.
Yes, and that.
But there are different
a lot
categories of
people
speedruns.
will do
One is
that,
like
yeah.
not using warp pipes.
Yes.
One is,
80%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then after that, I played Super Mario 64 was a revelation.
So
you know, one
We
of
talked about that in one of
the
the episodes.
first really popular 3D games with rotating camera angles and all that, and butt sliding was my favorite thing about that game.
Yeah, and
I
it had, like,
I
those
adored
levels
it
that
so
were
much.
The
Yeah,
penguins.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good times. Yeah, and then I didn't have a GameCube and we didn't have an N64. We just rented it from our local video store
Yeah, you could
back
rent
in the
it
day.
From your local
Systems.
Blockbuster?
No, it wasn't even a Blockbuster. It was some Hollywood Video, I think. Is
Oh
what it
my
and
was.
then we-
gosh, that takes me back.
And we all crumbled to dust right here on the podcast.
But run entire systems is like such a clever way to do
Yeah.
business.
Yep.
And so I didn't play any of the GameCube era games, and Super Mario 64 was the only one I played. I think we did rent Mario Kart 2, so that was a
Oh,
good
yeah,
time. But
classic.
then, I didn't play anything until I had the Wii, and then I played Super Mario Wii and Wii U, and I felt like those really propelled things forward because the gameplay got harder in some ways, a little bit easier in others, but I felt like the challenging levels were kind of like those really evil levels that people had. The Super Mario Maker game,
yes.
where you could create those really devious
single
levels.
path you can take
Yeah,
every
yeah.
jump, basically.
And some of those levels, especially towards the end of the games, were like that.
Interesting.
Yikes.
Yeah, and I just I think I just want to quote Cam real quick in his notes here. It's like, we won't talk about the non-Japan release of Super Mario 2, now known as Lost Levels. What an abomination. And also, a second quote, like, I abhor Wario and that side of Mario game, and I'm personally offended at how many of those games got ported over to the online platform. I said here, Wario is the lowest brow comedy, and I'm also against it.
Wow. All right. Here's the thing, though. I'm not defending Wario as a character or as a person. But
I would
am
defend Wario as a
defending.
character, as a person, but not as games.
I am
Yeah,
defending.
yeah.
I like micro mini games. That's a fun
Do they have to be
format.
about picking bug boogers out of people?
No, like I will. That's the part I'll jump off on. I'll say,
Yeah.
okay, we could make this about whatever. But I love you have 10 seconds to both figure out this game and play it and win.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah. I think it's a cool idea. And what Nintendo Land was in the Wii U, right? It's just
Yeah.
like a bunch of like small mini games and it sold really well. But none of them were about like
Picking noses,
picking noses and like
shaving hairy men.
and farts. It's just like I get that there's an audience for that, and if you're out there and you like it, that's good for you, and it's not for me. Yeah.
Fair.
I don't remember that from the Wario game I played.
Yeah,
at
it
all.
got-
No, you played the Wario Land Adventure games.
It
This
got-
is WarioWare.
WarioWare.
Okay.
Wario's games became silly once they, I don't know, he kind of became like the punchline.
Yeah.
He is the punchline, that's the thing. Wario is the punchline, for some reason. I just like to point out that Waluigi is not related to Wario, he just hangs out. Because he just likes to play tennis and
I
stuff.
was gonna say they
I
play
don't-
tennis together.
No,
though.
because he just likes to do stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it was basically like, I really want to get invited to the Mario stuff, but Luigi and Mario don't really like me, so I'm just going to become friends with Wario, I guess.
That's
Yeah.
gotta be awkward for him.
And he's also not in Smash.
I know.
Waluigi's-
Oh,
Even
yeah.
to this day.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a series of comics, like someone published like a manga basically explaining why Waluigi's in the Smash, and it's amazing. And it's at the end you find out that every new character that comes to Smash has to go to his like dojo to learn how to fight, and then they go in and he never gets to go.
I always thought Wario was Mario's brother. That was like a revelation when I learned he wasn't.
Yeah, he's just
Anti-Mario.
anti-Mario.
Yeah.
he's
I would-
anti-Flash.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I always
Yeah.
thought of him as Mario's evil twin.
Yeah, same. He's not. He's just. I wonder. His name's probably not even Wario. He's just like, I hate this guy so much that I'm gonna change my name to his name reversed, basically.
And all my clothes.
And all my clothes.
And matched.
And grow a big mustache.
Yeah.
So what
He's
we're really,
a rival plumber, probably. I don't know.
so what we're really saying is that he's got like a real deep closeted like crush on
Oh
Mario.
yeah. Oh, 100%.
So that's what
That's
this
why he
game
goes
is
for
really
the tennis
about.
and stuff. If he really hated him, he wouldn't do this stuff.
That's what I think. Yeah.
Headcanon for Wario.
Headcanon for Wario.
So we're gonna jump in. So that was our history with Mario. So let's talk about Mario history in general, right? So, we talked a little bit about what our platformers in our Portal episodes.
Yeah, because
so if
Portal
you
was
guys want-
platforms.
Yeah, we gotta check that out. Feel free to go re-watch or re-listen to those. But they used to be called Jump and Run right before platforming was a term. But they're essentially games in which the core objective is getting the player character from point A to B by traversing the environment. Usually that means different levels in whatever sense that is. So it could be like an actual level, or it could be like the objects that you have to traverse change.
Yep.
Pitfalls, roaming enemies, acrobatic maneuvers, whatever that means. So if it's the actual game called Pitfall from 1982, there are actual pitfalls, and there is
Snakes.
snakes, and they're not ropes. What are they're
Vines.
Vines and barrels and things. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first known example of a jump and run game was 1980's Space Panic, which looks a lot like Donkey Kong 1981, like a lot. Like if you look at it, you're gonna be like, okay, I see what was done here. But there's no giant monkey tossing things, and you don't jump at all.
Okay, you just run. Up
You
and
run,
fall back.
and there's ladders, just like in Donkey Kong 1981.
I see.
And then Nintendo developed Donkey Kong 1981, which is essentially Mario before Mario, so he's called Jumpman at this point, right? And he has to climb ladders and jump over barrels that the giant monkey wearing a wife beater cut out tosses at people. Do you know what the story of Donkey Kong 1981 is? I didn't know until I was prepping for this episode.
I do now.
Yeah.
I've read it,
Yeah.
but I don't remember at this point.
Isn't it just Donkey Kong grabs Peach, takes her to the top of a
Do you
construction
know why he
site?
grabs Peach?
Because it's a King Kong knockoff, and she's
Well, yes.
Well, yes, yeah.
But
a beautiful
also,
woman in King Kong.
Mario is a plumber.
Okay.
Jumpman is a plumber.
Right.
Who owns a plumbing business and also a pet gorilla.
It's his gorilla?
Yeah. And the
What?
pet gorilla is mistreated. That's like literally the explanation.
Yeah, he's a plumber. He has no way to store a gorilla.
Mario mistreats the pet gorilla. Yeah, it's just a bad idea. It's like Tiger King. It's a bad idea.
Like, why are you doing
Um,
this? So Mario's the villain.
To get back at Mario, he kidnaps his girlfriend, who at the time was called Pauline, now Princess Peach.
Pauline does make more sense as a girl that's a girlfriend of a plumber in New York City.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he throws barrels at Mario to stop him because he resents Mario. So Jumpman Mario is an architect of his own downfall in that first game.
I was gonna we want Mario to lose, right? To learn the lesson about improper gorilla keeping.
Yeah, how do you beat Donkey Kong? Do you beat Donkey Kong now?
Yeah, by getting to the top.
Yeah.
But then do you jump on him or
Well,
something?
no. So you can get all the way to the top, then he goes to the next level. There's level 2, and
Yeah,
I think you actually kill him. You just rescue Peach at some point.
Do you actually
I don't-
I don't remember if you. I don't think you do.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I
Yeah.
played it because I've played it at an arcade before, but
Yeah, I played it at an arcade, and you can play it at Nintendo Switch Online as well.
I think maybe there's like a theoretical limit to how many
Yeah.
rounds there is. Like, it's not really a game that
But it's like Space
Yeah.
Invaders. You don't win.
you win Space Invaders, don't you?
I think they just keep going faster and faster
Until you kill the
Until you-
last of the aliens.
I
lose.
think you can finish it. I think it's kind of like
Yeah.
someone just finished Tetris. Took them 30 years for someone to do that.
You can,
Right, but that just maxes out the score. There's no actual
no, you can
program
finish Space
yet.
Invaders. New aliens don't spawn.
really.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought
I
you
think
could
it
go
depends on the
faster,
space
faster.
There's a set number, and
Yeah.
they will drop down, reverse direction, and increase speed. Which actually, fun fact, was a
Mistake.
it was a mistake.
Yeah.
It turns out the game could just render the aliens faster as there were fewer of them.
Well,
But
No.
hey, fun little thing.
I-
But yeah, I'm pretty sure Donkey Kong wasn't a game that you won. It was a game that you just
Yeah.
got further in.
yeah, I feel like
Pretty
it's-
sure.
I think Space Invaders, the original, was like something like Galaga was like, you can't win. They just kept going impossibly faster. But then as they iterated on it, I'm sure they put win states in there because it was the point of games when they were in arcades was to make you play for as long as possible.
Yeah, get a high score.
And if there's no ending, then you play for forever. Right? That's the idea.
Right.
So after we had Donkey Kong 1981, we got Pitfall for the Atari 2600 in 1982. It looks a little more like the platformers we know today, kinda. But that was really Super Mario Brothers, the first one from 1985 that did that. But this is kind of there's a sequential series of screens in a different way than we see in Mario. But that's for intents and purposes, that's how it works. And they had 2 levels, right? So you could see what was happening underneath the
Right.
surface. And your goal was you have 20 minutes to find a treasure that's hidden in one of the screens. So it's kind of like Zelda, where you have all the screens exist at once, but the game is only rendering one of them at once.
Gotcha.
Right? So there's a map, but the way it works in Pitfall is you're only seeing one at once, and you have to figure out, you have to jump over the obstacles to get to where the randomly generated treasure is in that one.
I've only played it on emulator. Was it procedurally generated?
It's not procedurally generated.
No, so it's
Just
preset maps.
Yeah.
If you memorized where the treasures were, you could...
Probably.
Yeah.
You could probably, they probably have a set, RNG version of that. There's 17 places the treasure could be or something like that.
Gotcha.
But then in 1985, we got Super Mario Bros. 1, which, as Cam was saying, revolutionized gaming and saved gaming. Because at the time, we were experiencing, it was going through, the console crash, the video game crash was happening.
Yeah.
And Nintendo, the NES, basically saved... I'm not going to say saved gaming, because we still have gaming now. But I think it stopped the dark ages of gaming.
Yeah.
Where would have lost a decade of development, basically.
It's like this and Mario and Final Fantasy.
Yeah,
Yes,
Mario, Final Fantasy, and the original Legend of Zelda, which
Zelda,
came out in 85, 87, 89.
There you
So, it was the first game to become mainstream at home, right? Because people like Pac-Man, but when Pac-Man was brought to the homes, it was terrible.
go. Right.
So it became kind of a thing that people did at home instead of just having to go somewhere to do. And it was also the first time to have a game that had a story. Where you're not... Pitfall is you're Indiana Jones looking for treasure, that's the story. And Mario was there were characters that talked, even if it was very loose, right? You can build headcanon based on that kind of
Your
stuff.
princess is in another castle.
Yeah.
Yes. And it was also revolutionary for making players feel like they were exploring a world with a story instead of trying to solve a puzzle for the sake of solving a puzzle.
Right.
Right? So it had continuity in one of the because it had multiple worlds where you were figuring out where you're going, and also the way that the camera pans is revolutionary for the time, because when you're reach the edge of the screen, the camera pans over.
Yeah.
Instead of
Being a fixed cam.
Instead of a fixed cam, you finish that screen, you start on a new screen.
Right.
So it made it feel like it was more of a continuous world, which is a small change, but it was huge in terms of fostering exploration, right?
Yeah.
Cameron, you mentioned this game that I had never heard about called Solstice.
Yes.
What is this?
Yeah, so that's kind of an NES deep cut. I'm hoping at some point they're going to port it over to the Switch, because I feel like it would be a cult classic now. Not a lot of people played the game or even heard of it. The music is absolutely phenomenal. What the composer did for the game with the 8-bit era of NES is incredible. So if you ever get a chance, look up the main theme and look up the ending theme. Great. Cool. And so the music is really good, but also that game, it's got some battle elements, but also there's some platforming that you have to do. There's a goblin or something that's walking around a level, and he has a block on his head, and you have to jump on the block on his head, but he can't make it a full loop around the level, or the block falls off, and you got to exit the room and go back in.
Wow.
So you have to jump on the block that's on his head to jump on something else, jump around, and that game... at the beginning, it's pretty tough, and then towards the middle, it's not so bad. But then at the end of the game, there's some pixel-perfect or almost pixel-perfect jumps where you have, 2 little blocks that you have to jump one from to the other, and everything else is empty. So if you miss, you're going to fall down into, the level below you. So, and that one I don't think is quite pixel perfect, but I think there's maybe 2 or 3. And you're on the NES, so you got to just exactly nail that.
CRT.
Yeah. And so you're just barely making it into that next one. And I think it's a really interesting game with how the battle elements aren't too big, but I think the challenge level is pretty cool.
Solstice. And that's interesting to think about, pixel perfect. So to expand to the audience, that means that when you make a jump in one of these 2D games, every single thing on the screen is a 2D box, right? For you to make that jump, you have to jump from the exact point in the first box to the exact point in the second box, or else you don't make it, basically.
Right.
So from one pixel to one pixel, and that's a very small measurement.
Yeah.
So you have to be really good to do that kind of stuff. And this is what gave rise to a lot of speedrunners who will do pixel perfect jumps, where they figure out that in one of the boxes in one of the levels has a slightly bigger hitbox for it, so you can land just off of it, but you're still technically on it. Right. So it gives you an angle for another jump kind of thing. So if you ever see like pictures of like 2D Mario standing like with basically his pinky toe on like a block, that's like pixel perfect stuff. People figuring out like how far can I stand on this to make this jump in the easiest way possible, that kind of stuff.
I remember doing that in like the Game Boy Mario. It's like, okay, I can edge forward. It's like, all right, I got like the back part of my heels on this ledge.
Yes.
And it's funny because he's just standing normally, so he has the strongest core in the
world. Straight up toes.
Yeah. So someone who had this shower thought of Tony Hawk games kind of platforms?
That was me.
Cam?
Yeah, I'd been talking about Tony Hawk with some friends, and I was thinking, wait, is Tony Hawk a platformer?
Yeah, so this is interesting. I think we talked about genres a lot and see our previous discussions on this, but so Tony Hawk can be a platformer, but I think it'd be more like a skateboarding platforming game rather than a platformer with a skateboard, right? So like the main descriptor would be the skateboarding, because you're not necessarily always, not all of them, platforming with the skateboard to get to new areas or doing it to get more scores, right? So it's more of an obstacle course parkour type of way. But there is what I would call a platform with a skateboard that's called Ollie Ollie World. It's on the Switch, on the Nintendo Switch Online too. It's a 2D platformer, stylized, and you are a dude on a skateboard, and your goal is to get to the end of this level by getting as many tricks as possible, but it's a platformer, you're just going really fast.
Interesting.
So think like Sonic, but you're on the skateboard.
Yeah, I would almost consider, like less Tony Hawk Pro Skater and almost like SX Tricky or like one of the snowboarding games more of a platformer, because in snowboarding you're always working from the beginning of a level down to the end of a level.
That's true.
With like stuff and obstacles to clear and go through in between. In a skate park, the skate parks are much more like circular dynamic, and it's usually timed, but it is timed.
I think the big thing is that you're not jumping to get to something else. You're jumping to get a score.
Yes. But in snowboarding, you're going to the bottom.
You're trying to get to the bottom as fast as possible, or with as many tricks as possible.
And so
they are platformers, but I don't think you would be like SX Tricky platformer. So well, that's
misleading.
Yeah, but it is part of it. And this leads us to our point of view about evolution of this appearance of platformers. Right? We talked about this before. We're like, a lot of games now aren't platformers, they have platforming elements.
Yeah, the platforming has been sidelined to like a mini game or a side quest thing that you do.
Or a mechanic that's in there for some things.
Yeah.
Right? So, which leads me to my rant of don't put platforming in your game if your engine doesn't do pixel perfect things, right? Because you're asking me to do a jump that I can only do with this one specific press of the button that is not part of the game. Anyway.
Are you going to make an exception for like Metroidvania games? Where they make platforming that's hard, but then it gets easier as you unlock new ways to jump.
But they're made to have platforming in them.
Yeah.
Right. So some of these games are like platforming isn't like the platforming in Scarlet and Violet when you can jump with your main Pokemon is not smooth.
Bad. Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's not what it was made for. To just put that there to help you climb, but it's more annoying than just climbing. So interestingly, platformers were about 33% of the industry in the 90s. And then it was a third, and they went down to 15% in 1998. And since 2006, they hover around 2%.
Ooh, that's way lower than I would think.
So we do have releases every once in a while for like a lot of indie games still come out as platformers and smaller games, right? We have things like Celeste, which is a cult classic. That is a platformer with like air jumping mechanics and stuff like that. But if someone is making a AAA game, so top level industry, you expect it not to be a 2D platformer, right? Yeah. Or a platformer in general. You expect it to be something else that may have platforming in it.
Yeah.
So if it's something like Assassin's Creed or Prince of Persia, you're platforming that thing, right? You are jumping to get to a higher point to accomplish your goal, right? Yep. But they don't market them. Yeah, exactly.
Mirror's Edge, Portal.
So Portal. So they don't. They don't sell them as that, right? They're not called platformers like Celeste or Super Mario Wonder. So this happens because I think we have an expectation for what games are nowadays that they have to be more than that. Anything that is quote unquote just a platformer should be max 12 to 15 hours long. Anything more than that, like there's no reason to. I'm not going to keep coming back to this thing. Right. So that's something that if you have any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear it. But like just what we think of, because games used to be like Super Mario World is how long is that game if you're good at it. Like,
short, 10
to 15 hours max. So that's what games used to be, and now if you're selling me a game for $70, it shouldn't be 15 hours
Yeah,
of jumping
yeah,
up,
yeah,
right? That's the expectation.
It should be a 100-hour game.
But
Yeah.
does it make it better if it's 15 hours of jumping up, but then I add in 16 hours of worthless fetch quests, Cough Cough, Harvest Moon?
No, that's the thing. But that's like that creates some issues, right? The expectation is like I should have more to do in here, but if you don't do it well, then it's not necessarily better.
To have more
right?
good things, I'd
Yeah.
prefer the 8 hours of quality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Right.
no, I get that. I'm wondering what other genres have like died like
Been
that.
assimilated.
Or been assimilated. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm saying, like died in that fashion, been assimilated into. Because like if we take the platformers aren't dying, but they're just now a component of a game that's larger. I wonder if there's any other.
Well, going back to like the Space Invaders, Galaga era, those games don't really, you don't have that kind of thing now. But that's kind of had
side-scrolling shooters.
yeah, but they've had that resurgence on phones and things, like
Yeah.
those apps. Yeah,
It's a different market.
so-
Right? On my phone, I'm picking up my phone to play for 7 minutes,
Yeah.
not for.
Well, a mobile game on a phone
$5.
might cost you $3-4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And most gamers game on their phone. Like that's where most of the gaming comes from. But it's just interesting to think about how like most of these genres that used to be staples are folded into like game. Like Yakuza has like 700 mini games, and they all do these kind of things, right? One of them is
Right.
like a rhythm-based dancing game, and it's like, okay, like we don't get a lot of rhythm games by themselves anymore. We still do, but like because part of the reason is because they are small to code. So you can put them in stuff.
Right.
Right.
It does feel like sandbox games are the like carcinification of the games industry. Like everything becomes crabs eventually in
Yeah.
evolution. Everything is slowly becoming a
Yeah.
sandbox game.
For better or worse, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes like Harvest Moon was like this doesn't have to be an open world game. It actually doesn't help it to be an open world game. Sure, it's fun to run around sometimes, but I don't need this.
Racing games too, I guess, are getting closer
Yeah.
and closer to.
Or like they'll have a hub that's actually like a world you drive around instead of like clicking buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
So yeah, that's a good way of putting it. They're all becoming crabs.
Sandboxification.
Yeah. You heard it here, folks.
You heard it here.
Yeah,
That's,
TM.
that's what I do.
That's
I
our
make
next
new
paper.
words.
Yeah. Yeah. So to get into Super Mario Wonder here for our last 20 minutes or so of show. So this game for one of the first time in a while is in an entirely new kingdom. Right. The last one I can think of is. The last 2D that I can think of that is in a new kingdom, I don't think there is.
Super Mario 2.
Super Mario 2.
The
but,
Birdo one is.
Yeah, but
yeah.
that's
Or I guess if you're counting like not the main line,
Yeah.
but going like Super Mario Land.
not Land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's been a long
It's
time.
been a long time since there was a new kingdom we were exploring, right? So, because the 3D Marios do this, so you go to Delfino Island, which is
Right.
sunshine, and you go to like New Donk City, which is
Or space.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is in the neighboring Flower Kingdom, which we never heard of until now. So
This is
they
the
must have
first
had a
time,
lot
yes.
of beef until just. My headcanon is that they had beef until just now, and this is Peach's first democratic visit to the Flower Kingdom in a long time.
Prince Florian's father died.
Yes.
That's why he's the prince. And Prince, because he doesn't have the old grudges that his father harbored, the Mushroom Kingdom and the Flower Kingdom can reach peace.
Yes.
The racism is starting to abate a little bit, but it's why you only take like 4 toads, because we don't want beef starting between
Yeah,
the
yeah.
toads and the flower people.
Yeah. What are the flower people called?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Hippies.
And
Note for next time.
I feel like there's a little bit of synergy with the movie here because the movie kind of runs through different kingdoms, and now maybe they're going to start exploring different areas.
There's a bunch of
the world.
crossover between
Yeah,
the
we're
movie
gonna talk about more the aesthetics and the vibe of the movie and Wonder in the next episode.
and the music. Yeah.
And the music, yeah. But yeah, they have like the big thing about this game is that things talk. Like they have talking flowers, right? Just they're not characters; they're just
We
in
voice
levels.
acted, and they say more
Voice acted.
than like Mario
They have a
exists
lot
in the
of
same.
voices. They have a lot of lines.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Mario previously existed in the same sphere as Pokemon, where like Mario said his own name. He was like Mario,
Yeah.
but like he didn't say anything beyond that except for "ho ha yo."
Yeah.
Or like Link.
Yeah.
it's like Link.
Yeah.
And now we have these flowers that are like full on voice acted. They're like,
Yeah, and they're like, if you had to judge their IQ based on just voice, the flowers have a much higher lexicon and capability of forming
than
phrases.
Mario.
Yeah.
All of their genetic energy has been used toward brain development. They're like,
Yeah.
watch out! I wouldn't do that if I were you.
Yeah, yeah, they'll say stuff like that, or they'll, like Cam says if they grow on me. It's same with me. First time I saw it, I was like, that's a little weird.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and they have a good amount of personality to them
I think-
as you move throughout the game, because they have a little bit of sarcasm.
Yeah.
And at one point, one of them says, "I wonder what a Goomba tastes like."
Yeah.
And I was thinking, what in the world is this? I was not expecting this.
So the best way to describe these flowers is imagine if they took Ryan Reynolds and they said like, be yourself, but you're doing a Mario game, so tone it down.
Yep. Make
Yeah,
it PG.
I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Deadpool as a
tone
flower.
it more down, even Detective Pikachu, tone it a little more down than that.
Yeah.
And that's basically what the flowers are. Because there's one that's like, you walk into a level and like the Goombas are sleeping, and then it'll go like, oh look, it's sleeping, it's so cute, and you kick it, and it goes like, well then.
Yeah.
Well then.
Because it's essentially saying like, you just killed a sleeping creature.
Yep.
Think about that for a second. Yeah. So in this game, Princess Peach is not kidnapped. Again, these stories. Bowser assimilates with the main castle in the Flower Kingdom using a Wonder Flower or
Like a
Wonder
super
Seed.
wonder
Yeah.
flower.
Super
Super
Wonder
Wonders.
Flower,
Yeah.
which are things that give you power in this world. Essentially, he becomes a weapon of mass destruction,
Yep.
Yeah.
and it's your job to stop him somehow.
And also, I think that's really interesting. I think it's an interesting moment for us to like understand that like the core myth of Mario has changed a little bit, because like Mario is a very classic hero narrative myth, right? Pixel of Depth,
Yeah.
where the person has a princess that's captured by a dragon. They have to go capture the kill the dragon, get the princess, and bring her back home. We don't get to see Mario's change or return to his previous world, but we get to see like the basic hero arc. And here we've changed that. We don't have that. Bowser doesn't capture the princess. We're not going after Bowser to get something back. We're going after Bowser to prevent nuclear
Calamity.
holocaust.
Yeah.
I assume.
Yeah. So, interesting. That's different here too. Is that you can use Mario, Luigi, Peach, Daisy, 2 different Toads, Toadette, several Yoshis, and Nabbit, who is like a rabbit, right? He has a little mask on.
Yep.
He's really cute.
And I think that's why they made the change, for what it's worth. I think that the reason we've like changed and shifted the myth here is because Princess Peach is moving toward a playable character. We have Princess Peach the game coming out
Yeah,
later
it's the
this year.
second Peach.
Yes.
The first Peach game apparently was not good, and it's been like 15 years since they made a Peach game because that one wasn't well received. And the argument is that it's not that it wasn't well received; it's that it actually wasn't very good.
You made a bad game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's getting her own game in, I think, April. So I think we're moving it from the Damsel in Distress, right? Which is probably
Which is her as an object
Yeah.
to her
Yes.
as like a player. It's a very like
With agency and
it's
that
like
kind
a
of
very
stuff.
feminist move, yeah, to give her agency. And so I
Yeah.
think it's a good move. But
I
we've
think it's a good
fundamentally
move.
changed the Mario story.
I
Yes.
wanted to play with Peach. 'Cause like I said, I don't like playing with Mario, and I don't like playing with the Toads. They kind of freak me out.
They look weird when they transform too. They
And
keep their
I want to play
mushroom.
with Peach, but I only play one level with Peach because she has her dress, and you can't see her legs when she's running, so you don't know where she's standing.
The hitbox.
The hitbox is hard for me to like
Yeah.
figure out. Did you play with Peach?
No, I didn't. I
Yeah.
was going
Or
to
Daisy?
start a run with the other
Yeah.
characters because I hadn't played. I played it mostly through with Mario, and then I did a little bit with Yoshi and Nabbit just to
Yeah.
see how those play out.
Yeah, so I wanted to play with Peach, but like it's hard to see where her, because this is like there's not pixel perfect, but like you know you have to be precise, and it's hard to be precise when you don't know exactly where she's standing.
Right.
So I wish you could like change their costume, so give her the movie costume, where she has like a bike suit,
Yeah.
or from Mario Kart. That would be cool.
Better.
And she doesn't. So what's different about this game too is that like these characters are playable, which they were in Super Mario Wii U Deluxe or whatever it is. Like you can play with Peach, right? Which there is one that you can play with Peach at some point, and she glides.
Super Mario 2 is that way. The
Yeah,
one
Super
we
Mario
talked-
2,
the
yeah.
Donkey
And
Donkey
she
Panic.
glides, yeah.
And the reason she
That's
glides.
how gliding started.
That's how gliding started. Yeah.
But she glides in like the new Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe, whatever, one of those games. She'll glide. In this game, they all play the same, except for the Yoshis and Nabbit, who Cam can describe better than me. What is special about Yoshis and Nabbit?
Yeah, so they don't take damage exactly, not like others, because they don't have power up, so it doesn't really make sense to give them damage. But they'll take you will lose a life if you fall off the map or run into like pools of poison or acid, whatever it is, or apparently really large objects can kill
That'll
them.
trap you.
Can those
Yeah, and they
bowls
get
kill
squished.
you?
Which ones?
The bulls, the buffaloes, and stuff.
Oh, I didn't. I was going to
Yeah.
check that out.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I was quite curious.
I think it has to do with whether or not it counts as like a pinch versus like a damage.
Well,
the pinch-
there was one Wonder Seed where if you get like this huge
Boulder.
like spike ball, and even if it's not a pinch, if it runs up against you, you will die. But I think maybe it's because it can't really move through you. I guess they're trying to prevent
You're
that
just,
from
like,
happening,
stuck.
so that you're not behind it.
Yeah,
because you're supposed
like,
to outrun it,
exactly.
like Indiana Jones style.
Yeah, because then it would knock you back, right?
Yeah.
And, like you would get knocked back forever, basically.
Yeah. And something that's a weird choice with them, which I'm not sure why. Maybe it was just to conserve on code base, but you can get hit by things, and it'll vibrate, and then it'll still blink as a character. Whereas I guess I don't know, it's kind of weird, like that experience going through the game, and I was like, oh, I'm not actually taking damage, but
You're blinking.
it's blinking like I
Do you
have.
get invisibility for that moment?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
and you can move through objects.
Yeah, I think that's to train new people, because I mean it's supposed to be used to play like with your kids or with somebody along, and so I think it's still supposed to tell them, oh, you weren't supposed to do that.
Yeah.
We're just
that
not
makes
giving
sense.
you like a harsh punishment.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
It's a scaffolding mechanic.
Yeah.
It's a scaffolding
Other
mechanic.
characters,
That makes
this
sense.
means this is bad.
So I'd like to give Nintendo credit for that. That we're
Yeah.
like,
And this is kind of this is my pixel death for this episode is that Nintendo has made things. I think this is an attempt at being accessible, but what they really did was be approachable, which is also good.
what is the difference between the two?
So this often gets confused. Accessibility is like when you have it's the use of special controllers, button remapping, subtitles, enemy customization, so something like arachnophobia mode. For people that have arachnophobia, right? So in Jedi Survivor, Hogwarts Legacy, or Lethal Company, you can change how spidery the spiders look. Because if you're scared of spiders and that will stop you from playing this game, here's a way of not doing that anymore.
Yeah, or like color blindness. Frequently you see like HP bars change because red
Right,
and green are
yes.
hard for colorblind
Yeah.
people to see,
So-
so they'll change blue, yellow.
Accessibility is making people that aren't able to play your game in the way that it's structured be able to play it.
Right.
Approachability is making it so that people that don't have experience can come to it, can approach it, right, and can play it in a way that like isn't a hindrance.
These would be people that would be able to play it given a lot more time and dedication.
In terms of basic hand-eye motion control capabilities, they can play it. They just wouldn't be able to in terms of like skill of jumping or whatever.
they wouldn't maybe stick with it as well through the
And
training
that's
period.
stuff like difficulty modes, which has happened for a long time. Weapons and items that make the game easier. So there's a game coming out where it's like basic Grand Theft Auto, but you're a crab. But there's no guns in the game. Although you can go into settings and be like, give me a gun. So your character just has a gun. So if you're having trouble with the boss, you can just toggle that on, kill the boss, and keep going. Right, that's approachability, right? Or undoing moves in like Fire Emblem.
Okay,
Stuff
okay.
like that. That is approachability. Accessibility is more about giving potential for people who are not able to just pick up that controller or whatever it is, be able to do so in a certain way.
So I see what you're saying. You're saying because Yoshi really isn't about like not being able to play the game. It's just about making the game a little easier,
easier.
for
That's-
new
it's a
players. It is an
difficult-
approachable issue.
So the Yoshi and Nabbit being easier to harder to die with them, making the game easier, is an approachability thing because it's essentially a difficulty customization,
Right.
right? Which is, I appreciate the attempt, but it's not the same as our favorite difficulty customization we have seen in the show, which is Persona 4 Golden,
Oh, the
remake,
best.
which is the best thing. So in this game, it's like a JRPG turn-based. And in this game, you can customize not only like, do you want the game to be easy, medium, hard, or like merciless or something, but then you can select one of those, and within them, you can be like, how hard do you want the enemies to hit you? How hard do you want to hit enemies? How much money do you want them to drop? And
How much HP do you want the enemies
how
to
much
have?
HP? So it has all this kind of stuff, right? Where it's like you can select like light, normal, or hard for each of them. So if I want to play on normal, but I don't want to have to grind for XP, I can be like, I want the enemies to give me more XP, but everything else will be on normal, right? So you can really customize how your experience is going to go.
So this was Nintendo, and they wanted to go like super accessible, right? Instead of that, or approachable. They would have like Mario and Luigi play the game as regular. Peach Daisy play the game, but you get a hover mechanic that lets you jump and hover a little bit farther. Toads, you get the hover mechanic, and they can jump, and they get an extra upgrade slot that you could store an extra one. Yoshi, get the extra upgrade slots, and you don't take damage. Nabbit, you don't take damage, and you can't take the fall damage. And like it would be so many levels.
Customization level.
Yeah, and another thing that you could tack on there is somehow adding on a second badge.
Yeah.
For certain playability,
about
like
your
certain levels would be pretty nice having a
that's
second
two
badge.
badges.
That's what
Yeah.
I would go a step further and be like, once you maybe unlock or maybe you can choose any character and choose any of the characteristics to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if I want to play as Mario, but I'm not good enough to play as a normal Mario, I want to have the hover mechanic. I can just be like Mario, but with hover, right? So you have these things you can toggle on and off. I think that would be the best way to go about it, because then you can still play in the hard mode,
Right.
but then you're letting people play with Mario even if they want to not die as much, right? Accessibility would be allowing us to remap buttons, having things like subtitles that they don't have. So Nintendo's notoriously behind the times in terms of these things. Xbox and Sony have released special controllers that are fully remappable. I don't just mean like all the buttons are remappable, but I mean like the PlayStation accessibility controller lets you. It's a contraption that lets you like move, like buttons. Literally pick up a button and move to a different part of the controller.
Yeah,
if you want to use that button in that spot, or if you want to like restructure like a Lego thing.
Xbox has like longer thumbsticks and shorter thumbsticks.
And the Switch, especially on single player mode with the normal Joy-Con, that has a real issue with people who would have maybe like RA or something. Because, even me, I have a bit of sausage fingers going on. I do not enjoy using that single thing.
Yeah.
And, people who have maybe hand mobility issues, that's definitely not
what's cool
ideal.
about the Switch is that the thing that most accessibility writers write about is that Nintendo does things that are accessible but not on purpose. So the Switch, in fact, you can detach the Joy-Cons, tell the Switch that they're going to be laying down and play with them just by like not holding the controller but clicking the buttons on the like table or whatever it is. That is huge. But they didn't do that on purpose.
That's not their intention.
That's not why they want to do this. So a quote from Aonuma in 2019, I believe this is kind of a cultural thing also. So Nintendo thinks that because they put so much care into their games, the way the buttons are mapped is the way the game should be played. So there's a quote from Aonuma from 2019 where he says, "If we freely let players do customizations on key assignments and such, I feel like we're letting go of our responsibility as a developer. We have something in mind for everybody when we play the game, so that's what we hope players experience and enjoy as well." And when someone asks him, like, well, what about players that like literally can't stretch their finger to press this button? He says, that's a good idea. We'll keep that in mind when we develop the next game, and the next game came out the exact same way. So it is sort of like a thinking of like this is a responsibility on the developers. We have figured out the most effective way of holding this controller. Just trust us.
For a quote-unquote normal player.
Yeah, but it's not about, it's about people that cannot hold the control that way or cannot function that way, right? So it's a little weird. And then we have like stuff in like Pokemon, like the sound settings in Sword and Shield are unlockable in-game. Like you have to go talk to an NPC to let you customize how loud the sound is going to be, which again, like, I don't know, just give us a setting.
Why have you done this?
So it's interesting to think about how I believe this is an attempt of them to do accessibility, but it's really approachability. And this is, I always kind of knew the difference here, but I learned a little more about this listening to a couple of podcasts on IGN where they brought an accessibility reviewer to talk about this difference, and also a guy that's really plugged in on Nintendo talking about why they consider this accessibility approachability and they don't really see this difference.
Gotcha.
So it is an approachability that doesn't do it as well as other games have done it before.
Right.
But it's better than nothing.
We're growing. We're seeing growth, Nintendo.
Growth, perhaps. Very slow. Baby steps. Nabbit steps.
Right before, evidently, according to Phil, we consign this genre to the dumpster.
Yeah.
Forever.
So in this game, which is the 2D Mario, right? So this game, the difference between this game and the other Mario is that you are looking for Wonder Flowers, right? And these Wonder Flowers have Wonder Seeds. And the Wonder Seeds, there's one in each level, and they essentially...
At least.
make the level become the Wonder Flower.
Yes, yeah.
You said one Wonder Seed per level.
Yeah.
There's more than one per level, but there's one Wonder Effect per level.
Yep.
Right? And these Wonder Effects are... the best way to describe it is if Mario took an acid.
So much drug references in
bit.
this game.
Yes, yeah.
We'll talk about it next time.
But Ken, give us a couple of your favorite examples of it. So when you jump onto a Wonder Flower, the level changes.
Yes.
So give us a couple of examples.
Yeah. So there's a couple where you turn into like balloon version of your character, and you're kind of in a microgravity, zero gravity situation, and you're just kind of like floating around and wiggling to move around the level, which is pretty cool and also very frustrating because they've got bumpers and things.
Love it.
And then you can turn into a spike ball. There's some where you're just kind of racing through a level midair with a bunch of superstars. Yeah. And then somewhere it becomes a shadow level where the background is lit but the foreground is blacked out.
Dark.
Oh, wow.
That's
And
cool.
so there's some pretty cool mechanics with it. I think that was probably the thing that I was skeptical about it coming in. I was thinking, okay, it seems like a gimmick, but I think it added some really interesting elements to a Mario game that, kind of gives you 2 levels for 1.
Yeah, because I'm still skeptical about it. I've only played about an hour, and I'm still skeptical because I feel like some of them don't feel like they add anything. They just feel like they exist for existing.
I think that's true, especially early on. The first couple worlds, it's so gentle that they didn't want to get too crazy, but towards the back end, it adds a lot of interesting things.
Yeah, because I think it's something to be said about like how Super Mario has always had like exploration, right? Even when you're playing like the original, you're trying to find warp pipes that exist in invisible blocks,
Right.
Stuff like that. So this is a way of doing that too, where they will give you a Wonder Flower, and when you have that Wonder Flower active, there's a power up you can only get if you have it active. But if you don't have it active, you can get a different power up. So they're essentially creating a level and a half at least per level,
Yeah.
right? So the people that like to 100% these games are gonna have a lot of fun with these. I still feel like they're a little gimmicky, but I'm excited to see the Spike Ball one, for example. And stuff like that. Like the one where the piranha plants just sing.
Love it.
I hated that one.
Oh.
We will disagree.
Yeah.
I was like, why does this?
We're going to
There's
talk
a-
next time about
There's
the
a better
music
one of
Mario.
those later.
That was closer to my reaction. I was like, what?
I was like, cool, but also why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a better one of those later.
Okay.
Okay.
Is what I'll say.
And the Y sounds
Can you
like...
become a Bullet Bill at some point?
I wish. That would have been really
Man,
cool.
I really want to become a Bullet
Yeah.
Bill.
The Y does sound like, if I'm hearing you correctly, and this is big, is like, we can't show you the really cool things Wonder Flowers can do right off the bat.
Because you're not good enough.
Because you're not good enough
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah,
Which I respect
part of it, yeah.
as a
Yeah, yeah.
scaffolding, even if we're starting the scaffold way lower than it should be started.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
I
think
agree.
the one with the pipe that it becomes a worm. That one's really cool because
Yes.
you can keep coming back to it to grab stuff.
Yeah.
But that's fair. I was trying to scaffold stuff, right? And Nintendo was big about that. But in this game, you also can equip badges, which are like, if you played Call of Duty or something like that.
Then you can compete in the Pokemon. Wait, no,
You know,
Wrong
what?
badge.
Pokemon, this isn't that. They give you like different power ups. So one of them is like you get more coins per level, or so like stuff like that. So one of them is like you can glide with your hat.
Yep.
Yep.
Right, so it lets you reach other areas. So it's kind of cool that you can equip some power ups, and and again it adds a different mechanic to the game.
Yep.
Ken, what was your favorite badge?
Ooh, my favorite badge.
We can talk more about this later, but
Yeah, give
For the 100%ers, your favorite badge is probably going to be the coin magnet badge, because there's one really annoying. The last medal is the most annoying to get because it's just coin farming.
like if you get close enough, it'll like
Yeah,
go to you.
and
Nice.
the mechanic behind that is really cool, and we can talk about that next time, I guess. But
Yeah.
maybe my favorite, I think that's a good all-around tool, might be some of the like jumping types. They have like floating jump, they have
The
double jump,
jump.
the double kick, and then I guess parachute cap kind of counts as that, and there's like one or two others, I think, and I think that is the most useful.
Jumping would be the most.
Yeah, I have the-
and there's
I
some
have
really
the-
challenging
the
levels.
jump on the wall, jump one straight.
Yes.
Equip right now.
And I'll have a recommendation at the end for when you should absolutely not use that, because I found that out by mistake.
Good to know.
That's good to know. Yeah, so this game, it does mess around with the Mario formula a little bit in terms of it adds these acid trips,
Yeah.
right, these Wonder Flowers, and then it also adds badges, which is totally new, and it has new power-ups like Elephant Mario, which we can talk more about.
There is life left in this genre, people.
Yes.
Well,
Give it a chance.
The reason that I don't think this is going to be quick, but like Cam and John both talked about how they really enjoy 2D Marios, and they hope that this means that we're going to get more 2D Marios. I think this means that we're going to get less 2D Marios.
No.
Not because it's not going to do well; it's going to sell well. It's a Mario game and it's well done, right? But this is the kind of game that you get mid-cycle between two big games. So part of these games, they use a lot to test mechanics. So like if ever Mario does well in terms of like marketing and stuff, it's likely you'll see something like that in the next 3D Mario, and like shooting water at stuff. So a lot of these smaller games are made to test things that they want to do in the future. But like we talked about, 2D platformers that are 12 hours long are not really what the industry does anymore.
Yeah.
So I think this is a way of capitalizing on the art and on the popularity of the Mario movie, getting new people in with a little bit of an easier platformer, especially in the beginning, to prep people to get hyped for the next Mario game that might be a launch title for the Switch 2, which is coming out probably this year.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we'll get a lot of remakes for 2D Marios. I think they'll keep coming out with those. But I don't think we're gonna get a new 2D. Super Mario 1 or 2 will exist, I think, but I don't think it'll be in the next year or year and a half.
Yeah.
It'll probably be like 3 or 4 years before we see that.
Yeah,
It'll
that's
probably
generally been the development cycle for these.
Yeah.
They come 3 to 4 years
It'll
apart.
probably be a late Switch 2 game.
Late
if I had to
Switch
guess,
2.
when they have a hiatus between 2 big Mario games.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But they'll keep making them because it's core to the experience, and they'll keep remaking stuff. But we're not going to all of a sudden see more of these. Sorry, guys.
Wow.
Sorry, I'm a Debbie Downer. Any Cam? One last thing I wanted to ask you as we wrap up here: are there any hints you have for us, especially in the
Yes. What advice do you have?
Yes.
in the
So,
early 5 hours of this game?
Yeah, one of the hardest early levels is one of the jump levels, and my word of advice there is don't use the double wall kick badge when you do that. You can get through the middle part just fine, but towards the end, you will not get through that just fine because you don't have enough wall to kick with that. And I didn't realize I had that badge on and that I wasn't supposed to. I took it off and then I finally got through it without too much difficulty
It'll
after
stop
that.
you dead.
Yeah, there's a point where you're just going to crash and burn with that thing because it's interfering with the mechanic of jumping. And
Because you jump up again, right? So
Yeah.
if there's nothing there for you to jump up again on,
Then you don't bounce this
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is just, really explore. If you're a 100%er, there's even... so I've gone through the whole game, and I even went back to the first couple levels, and I noticed that there were things that I missed. Not things that are crucial to a level, but they were kind of cool little, cloud portions that you can get up to that I didn't even know before. So, jump around and, try to find invisible blocks and things.
There's a lot of care in this.
Yes.
The team that does this, one of the directors of Super Mario 3 is still at Nintendo and directing stuff, and he was one of the main directors for this.
What?
Yeah, no,
Wow.
for real.
If it shows, this feels
Yeah.
like the spiritual successor to 3.
Yes.
That
I would
actually
say
was
it's...
said in the podcast I was listening to. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
somewhere between 3 and Wii and Wii U.
Yeah.
It has elements of
It's
all of
more
those.
traditional at the same time it's revolutionary, which
Yes.
is kind of where Nintendo likes to live, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're wrapping up here. That was it. That was our Professor's Play Feat guest primer on Super Mario Wonder. So we've only played a couple of us have only played about an hour, a couple of us have finished it, but next week we're going to give you our, in 3 weeks on the next episode we'll give you our first impressions as usual. We'll have played about half the game, maybe 40% of the game, something like that, so 5 to 6 hours.
Try to get through World 4.
Okay, we'll try to get to World 4. That's the goal.
Wait, through or 2?
Through.
That's what I thought you said.
Yeah, through World 4.
Through World 4. Wait, World 2 or through World 4?
Through World 4.
Yeah.
Okay, through World 4. Thanks again for joining us here at Professor's Play, the show in which you can get just a pixel of deep thinking with your mostly nonsensical video game discussions. I'm Professor Phil Chavot. He's Professor John Adams. He's Professor Brendan West. And he's Professor Cam Williams. And together we're professors who play video games. See y'all in a few weeks for some Mario discussion, maybe some physics Mario discussion.
Sure. Absolutely.
All right, see y'all then.